Hi all, just a quick video on a piece of software that I use. I've been asked several questions about what sort of software I use. Well, I use different pieces of software for different tasks. Each week I do a radio show with a friend of mine, and I use this piece of software, Mixmeister Studio, to create the hour-long mix that I do. My friend also uses Mixmeister Studio for the hour mix that he does. I wanted to show you quickly how simple it is really to use. The interface itself is very simple and intuitive. There are a lot of more complex features as well as effects plugins and things like that, but basic overview is this. You have your library here, your playlist here, your timeline here. So the first thing to do is select a track. So what we'll do is let's select a track. So we'll have At Midnight by Shaunyboy, who's a local producer, a good friend of the radio show. You can see I've added it to the playlist on this side, and it's supplied the waveform into the timeline at the bottom. It's how it analyzes it when you bring the tracks into the application. And I'm just going to choose another one. Now I'm going to mix in key, which I normally do. So we've got 4A, that's the Camelot key for the first track. So I'm going to just pick one that's 5A. This is Disco Works, the original mix by DJ Zimmo, by Scott, another friend of the radio shows. What you'll notice is one track is at 127, the other track is at 128. Near as makes no difference. Now, what it's done is the software has analysed the length of the track, the key it's in, and various other features, and grabbed the waveform out. Now, what we have is we have controls. What I'll do is I'm going to make this window bigger, just so that you can see what's going on. Right, we've got the waveform here. The orange line that the cursor is on now is the outro marker for the track that I want to leave, and I have an intro marker on the track I'm going to go into. Now what I want to do is I'm going to line that up, so I just grab it and move it. You're going to line it up with that peak in the waveform there, and if you'll notice, I'm not sure how clear this is on the video, but you'll see that there's a drop, and that corresponds with the end of the track here. Now a couple of little management tasks first. First of all, set the master volume to -1 dB. Acts a bit like a compressor, and it's just what I do for the radio show. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the outgoing volume end marker to -10, and I'm going to drop the incoming volume marker to -10. It's -10 dB, it just creates a bit of a softer transition between the two. And then because I've got a drop off in the waveform here, I'm going to just move the kill volume over a bit. You can set marker volumes anywhere along this line. Okay, all you have to do is put the cursor where you want it, press V, and it puts a little volume marker there. You can also add bass, middle and treble marker lines as well, so you can alter each of those, the equalizing sets, independently. What I'll do is I'll just play this. As you can hear, the tracks are just mixing together nicely. And we're just listening to the whole transition. And there we go. Now, quite happy with that transition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another song. So I'm looking for, again, mixing in keys. So looking for a 5 or a 6, 4, 5 or a 6, depending on which way on the scale I wish to go. The reason for using mixed in key, or using the key harmonizer, or no, the harmonic mixing they call it, is so that the actual notes, or the note that the song was written in, stays the same, or has very similar tones, so that it doesn't sound like it's crashing together. One seems to blend very, very neatly into the next. So what am I looking for? Something in the 6 range. Let's have another Shaunyboy track. Right, now one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately change the BPM of this track. I'm going to change it on a global scale, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the BPM to 130 at the end of the track I've just added. Now, so what's going to happen is from this point at the beginning of the track I've just added to the end of the track, it's going to increase by 2 BPM. That might be a little harsh. Now I use this trick quite a lot for the radio show because we have to fit into an hour. So what I'll do is I'll actually delete the in-between markers. So I'll end up, if I zoom out, I end up with a start BPM and an end BPM for my mix. What it does is it will then smoothly transition from 127 to 130 over the entire length of the mix, which currently this one is 17 minutes long now. So again, I'll just alter the screen just so we can see what's going on here. So we've got this new track, so just a little management task again. So let's set the dB values -10, -10 again, and let's listen to this. And there we go, the transition between those two tracks, and it's that easy. Excuse me, it's winter here in the UK and I've got a cold. So that just shows you how the basic principle works. You can then get really creative if you want. Now what I'm going to try and do is, let's see if I can find a track that's wildly, in fact one that I do like is, what key is that in? And it's not in the right key, unfortunately. This one, I'm rather partial to this at the minute. I'll use it, although I wouldn't normally put it in this position because the key is far too off. It's 6A to 10A. But what I'm doing is I'm just showing you this. I'm actually going to put it between these two tracks. So as you can see, I can move the tracks in my playlist up and down. I can delete them and move them around if I'm not happy with the order. But what I've now got is I've now got this track in here which drops down to 115 BPM. Well, that's no good, so I'll tell you what, let's get rid of that. Let's see what the transition sounds like. That's not too bad, but I mean obviously you can hear there is a clash of key there because there's such a jump between the two. One thing I'd like to do is I'd like to, in this section here in the breakdown, I'd like to reduce it at this point back down to its original BPM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the marker where it drops back in, and that's at 128.89. So make a quick note of that on a notepad. The reason for making a note of that is when I put the original marker value in here and alter it, it's going to change. I need to know what that BPM would have been had I not changed it. So I'm going to put the marker where I want it, and in this bottom line, just above the scroll bar, I'm going to put add original tempo marker. So it's 115. But what I do want to do, in fact, sorry, what I should have done is at that point, just before the breakdown, is made a note of the BPM as well. So 128.78. So what I want to do is I go back into where I want it to drop down, add original tempo marker, but at that point there I want to add tempo marker, but I want to add it at 128.78, which was the value that we found when we put the cursor there prior to putting the original tempo marker in. I'm going to have to zoom in a bit because it's a bit tight here. So I'm going to put an added tempo marker there. The reason for doing this is I want to drop the BPM right down and then I want to build it back up again. But it's over a short period of time. This is what it sounds like. There we go, just approaching the original BPM now, and it's now starting to climb back up. And we're back to the original BPM that it would have been in the track had I not put in the original tempo marker in the middle. So, I mean, other things that we can do is I'll just go and move on to another. Let's just go on to this. Will do. I'm just going to move into this track, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bass marker in. Okay, and what I can now do is I can actually drop the bass. For instance, I could drop the bass out there. Okay, and I'll move that marker over. Let's put that marker there and then drop that there. Now you can hear the effect of that. It might be a bit harsh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and delete that one, and let's do it again. You see, that's the bass marker being applied, and if I get rid of those, just save cluttering up the place. And no, I can never remember. I never remember the shortcut keys for the other ones. It's there you go. Place the marker where you want, and then press T, and you get a treble marker. And we'll put another treble marker there, and another one there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that treble marker, bring it down. And likewise, if I just remove these just for clarity, and then I put that there and press the M will give me a mid marker. That's a MIDI cue marker. So get rid of that. And that does the MIDI cue. And you can combine any number of these, so you can have all three of them, or four of them, the volume, the bass, the middle, and the treble all running, and you can make the effects as complicated as you want. So, other things that you can do with this application, you can use a MIDI controller. I do actually have a Mixmeister controller, but for reasons best known to itself, it doesn't want to work with this particular version of Studio. It might be because this version's reasonably old now. It was originally designed, I think the controller was designed for Fusion, which is the live play version. That allows you to cue So a bit like a normal DJ setup where you can actually play live. You can put tracks in and then you can queue them up, but obviously you need 2 sound cards. This is a studio product. Once you've done your mix, you can then export it into various formats. You can burn it straight onto an audio CD. Now, unfortunately, that feature doesn't work in mine because for some reason I must have put another driver on my laptop, so that feature stopped working, unfortunately. You can also send it to a file or hardware device. So if I go into the menu and export to file, then I can select WAV file, MP3 or WMA. And if it's in WAV file format, I can actually separate the songs into tracks, and then using, for instance, Windows Media Player, I can then burn those tracks onto a CD with gapless, so it creates a mixed CD but with selectable tracks, which is quite handy. We've also got an export to device. So for example, I've got it set to iTunes and iPod. It'll just send it straight into my iTunes library, and then I can drop it straight onto my iPhone or iPad. You can print the library, so you can print the list of the tracks you have in your library. You can also print your playlist, so that's quite handy. For instance, when we're on the radio, it's nice to have a piece of paper to refer to. Save the playlist, open playlists. I mean, as I say, I use this every week for my radio show. Edit functions, you can view various different things like the library, the effects, song slicer. Song slicer, incidentally, is if I select a track and I just move this up here and go into song slicer. This is the song slicer. For those familiar with Ableton, this is like your warping feature. So if the beat gridding and the analyzing doesn't quite get it right, you can manually manipulate it in this area here. To be honest with you, I very rarely use it. One of the reasons I don't use it that often is because what you can actually do is you can zoom right into the track and you can see the waveform. What I'll do is I'll just put it on that marker there. It will always zoom in on the marker, by the way, and then I can deselect that snap to beat. Now I can move that anywhere I like now, so I could move it onto there if I thought that that's where it should be, and then I can play the track. Okay, so there's that feature. In the light, we got various rulers. You can also have 4 strips, or 6 strips, or 8 strips, and each one of these strips is a track. So you'll see 1, 2, 3, because I've only got 3 tracks in here. Oh no, there's 4 tracks. There we go. Is there any more tracks? There, 5. Now I just set it up on 2 strips, just purely for clarity, nothing else. Let me come down there. In the library, we can decide which columns we want showing, new categories. So here's my categories. These are all the different categories I use at the moment. We can clean the library, import or export the library. We've got various playback functions. You can use the keyboard for quite a lot of this. There's various tools. You've got a transition set, so no transitions, and then it goes, there's a whole bunch in there. For instance, you can actually access them from over here. So at the moment they should be on beatmix 32, which is the default setting I've chosen. When I actually do my mix for the show, they all end up as custom beatmix, only because I tend to move things around and select components of songs. We've got various category functions, edit tags, so you can edit the MP3 tag. There's tweaks as well. They are for creating specific tweaks to a track, and it remembers what you want to do with it. So for example, I can select a beat mix, transitions and various other things, and I can actually save that to a file that's associated with that track. So when I load that track back in, it remembers. Extras, there's various bits and pieces and effects and music and Mixmeister information, and obviously the help system as well. Okay. That's basically all it's about. It's a good little piece of software. It starts at about £36 for Express, the Express version. I can show you the Express version because I happen to have that as well. It's the first version I got. With Express, it's slightly. It doesn't have as many of the the kind of more in-depth functions that the Studio version does, but as a basic product, it works really well. This is a mix not done by me. I think this is by Murray actually. That was actually done. This mix was actually done in Studio, and Studio and Express have certain differences, so it didn't really understand what it was the marker system was trying to accomplish. But again, it's exactly the same. They do use different libraries. But it's a very easy product to use. If you're just getting into it and you don't really want to spend, you know, a couple of £100 or whatever on the studio version, then this is a version that you can use, you know, gym health instructors, fitness instructors, just people who want to make mixes for when they go to the gym, or just because for parties and things. This is, you know, it's a fantastic little piece of software. You can get this on the iPad as well. It's called IDJ on the iPad. The only thing with the iPad version is it's not as easy to use, I find, because you're dealing with the iPad's touchscreen. And this is much more precise in its methodology. Anyway, that's Mixmeister. I hope you enjoyed it.